Hey guys, welcome to the Challenge Podcast. I'm Coach Steve.
And I'm Coach Nick, and we're going to be talking about everything fitness, health, and the challenge.
Let's get on with the show.
What's up guys, Coach Steve here and welcome back to another episode of the Challenge Weekly Show. In today's episode, I'm joined with our co-host, Coach Nick. Nick, how are we doing today?
I'm very well, thanks Coach Steve. I am next to you in person today, across the table from you.
Across the table, so there is always space between us, Nick.
Yes.
The old table, keeping us the distance.
Yeah.
Now, Nick, exciting thing happened the other day.
What?
Right, exciting thing, my little boy George, he popped a squat.
Oh, wow.
He was just like Flow Rider. He
Yeah.
had his apple bottom jeans on and he lowered himself down into a squat. It was beautiful, and I confirmed that he was my son.
Yeah.
It was amazing. It was a sight. But it was really interesting because what he was doing is he was standing next to like the coffee table, holding onto the coffee table, whacking the coffee table with his hand, looking at me. And then there was a bit of sunshine or sunlight that came through the window and was like twinkling on the floor, right? So he saw that and he wanted to touch it and grab it and try to eat it because he does that. He tries to put stuff in his mouth. So what he had to do was he doesn't have the strength or the skill to be able to do a squat on his own. He's still learning how to, stand up on his own and still trying to figure out how to walk and stuff. So he needed to hold onto the coffee table as he popped down to a squat so that he can touch the sunlight on the carpet and try to grab the sunlight and eat the sunlight, right?
Yeah.
So I think it was a really beautiful display of how we should approach our training. Okay, where there's certain activities that we want to do, like a squat as an example, that take an element of strength to be able to do a squat and an element of skill to be able to do a squat, right? Because, there's more to a squat than, just moving up and down. We need to have some balance, some coordination. We need to know where our center of gravity is, and then we need to have enough strength in our, quadriceps and our glutes to be able to lower ourselves down and stand back up. So what my boy George needed to do was he had to regress the squat, make the squat easier so that he can complete a squat as he learns how to the skill of the squat and develop strength in his body, in his little body, to do a squat. Yeah. And I think little George is teaching me lessons every week, and as a byproduct, teaching you, our dear listener, lessons every week about movement as he's learning how to move and complete a squat pattern. Same as you. If you are unable to complete an exercise like a squat, you might need to regress it. And that might mean that you take the barbell off your back or take the dumbbell off of your chest if you're doing a goblet squat or something and, hold onto a squat rack with your hands or a TRX suspension rope, or maybe just holding onto a pole or a chair or something to learn the skill of lowering yourself down to a squat, develop the strength, and then slowly build yourself back up again. And you can apply that to any exercise, right?
So true. It's because little kids don't have the ego attached to it. So that's what we've got to do. We've got to drop the ego when we head into the gym, and therefore we can regress it to where we need to. Because George didn't know that he can eventually do a squat with a barbell. You haven't taught him that yet, although that's probably the first thing.
That's the first step.
Ever taught him in his life.
Yeah. So he's not walking yet, but he knows the barbell.
Yeah, he knows.
He knows.
He knows. He's seen his dad do it, but he knows that he's not up to it yet.
Yeah.
He doesn't know. He doesn't quite know what it comes with. That it's a very good idea to eventually get there, but he doesn't know.
That's right. And just touching on that, like I hate to be a gatekeeper of the barbell where some folk out there, would say things like, you've got to earn the right to touch the barbell or earn the right to be in the weight room or earn the right to wear a weightlifting belt or whatever bullshit people say. Like that's not the point here, where sometimes it's wise to regress an exercise. Sometimes it's wise that, we don't start in the gym expecting something of ourselves. Like if you are going to do a squat, that you need to use a barbell, or if you are going to use dumbbells to do a bicep curl, that you need to start at 10 kilos or something ridiculous, where we can start at any stage where we are. It's probably best that we take our ego away so that we can regress the movement, learn the skill, one, and then develop strength, two, so that we can achieve our goal, which is ultimately trying to build muscle for the most of us, unless you have specific strength-related goals where, we need that tug of war between skill and strength so we can improve our overall performance.
Yeah, and be playful, like George trying to eat the stars.
Eat the stars, eat the twinkly sunlight in the window.
So, he was just playing around, and that's also what you can do in the gym. I remember when I was learning to do a snatch and I had to use a broomstick. I think it was probably for about 6 months before I even touched a barbell, just to learn the pattern.
Yep. And then you develop the skill, and then you can start loading that skill.
Yes, absolutely. And you definitely don't want to do that one until you know how to do it, because once things are above your head, you're in big trouble.
Yeah.
or in a good place.
In a good place.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that applies to like other more, quote, simple movements. Like take, for example, the bicep curl. Most of us see bicep curls. It's whenever you think of training, you think bicep curl. You know, maybe it's from the Arnie days, watching Arnold doing bicep curls. That's what you see in movies. Like, I want to start exercising on doing bicep curls, right? So most of us think, all right, simple exercise, you know, grab something in my hand, bend the elbow, do a bicep curl. When there is a little bit more to it, to be able to complete a bicep curl where it targets the bicep well versus doing a bicep curl that is more of like a, you know, like a clean and jerk movement where you're hiking your hips and swinging your arms and doing those types of movements. You might benefit from actually regressing the exercise instead of grabbing the 10, 15, 20 kilo dumbbells and, you know, swing the things just because you want to be the biggest guy or girl in the gym. You might benefit from actually just scaling it back, doing a few more repetitions, getting a pump, feeling the burn in your bicep and going, well, yeah, I'm certain I trained my bicep here, not my forearm, shoulder, chest, hips while doing the movement that looks like a bicep curl.
True.
Nick, we're in an exciting time of the challenge, week 7 here, and we've officially ticked over into that second half, right? Where we often go, oh yeah, week 6, that's halfway. Well, week 6, we've got to complete week 6, and then we move into week 7. So technically, we are on the second phase of the challenge, that second half of the challenge, and we are in that middle point of the middle point of the challenge, middle points, right?
That's
the median
crazy.
of the challenge.
Crazy.
And at this time is when things can become a little bit stale, stagnant, a little bit, quote, boring, because the first 4 weeks of the challenge is exciting. It's new, it's fresh. Oh, how cool is this? The end of the challenge, it's about to finish. You know, you start seeing these great results and all these, you know, taking photos of yourself. Oh, it's only a couple more weeks to go. I can get there. But the middle part is where, you know, it can suck a little bit, right? It's almost like when you're watching a movie. You know, you go watch a big blockbuster movie, maybe a Marvel movie. I'm a bit of a Marvel fan myself. You know, the start of the movie is fun and exciting. There's like an action set piece. Oh, this is awesome. The middle part is just the story. It's ticking along. Okay, what's happening here? You know, a bit of drama there, and then the end is all excitement. You know, the third act, the big finale, the big boom, 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 the show-stopping moment. So we're like in that middle phase of the story right now, where you can dictate where your story goes right now. It's the work you put in now that you can reap the rewards and the benefits of later. So keep going. If you're not alone, if you are feeling a little bit stale, stagnant, and a little bit, you know, at the moment, that's okay.
Yeah, it's very normal, and just keep going.
Now, Nick, in supplement news, we've had a pretty exciting sale at the moment with Coles. Okay, so our Maxine's Burn Bar range recently had a sale at Coles, and it sold out in lots of places, which is really cool to see.
It was crazy to see.
And we saw lots of photos on our Facebook social hub of people buying boxes and boxes of Maxine Burn bars and cookies, which is beautiful. So we are extending that actually and going towards Chemist Warehouse now. Okay, so Chemist Warehouse is having another sale, and I think what's really cool about Chemist Warehouse is they stock a lot more of Burn Bar flavors.
They do 5 or 6.
8, Nick.
8. There you go.
So Coles has 2. Chemist Warehouse has 8.
8.
So if you missed out of the Coles sale and you'd like to get some more Burn Bars, head on over to Chemist Warehouse, and I think they've got it for like $2 and maybe some cents, $2.09, something like that, for a Burn Bar. And you know, guys, we can have Burn Bars. They're really tasty. They're about 124 calories off the top of my head. So you know, you can either choose to have a Max's Soup Shred bar, which might be 200 calories there, or you could have 2 Burn Bars. How good! So if you're unsure of the flavor, you can try 2 different flavors of Maxine's Burn Bar, or you can extend your protein snack. So instead of having just 1 bar at one particular time, you could have 2 bars, maybe an hour apart. How good is that?
Oh, so good. Or you could have even a bar and a cookie from Maxine.
That's crazy.
Yeah, Shane does that.
Oh, Shane, he's
be like Shane.
Be like Shane. He's broken the system.
He loves
he's really
a good
creative.
caramel crunch. He loves that one, and the cookies and cream. They're his 2 favorite flavors.
I'm a big fan of the red velvet.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Just the white chocolate outside, the red on the inside. Ooh,
well, I'll have to introduce Shane to red velvet because we do not have that here. So I'll have to go to Chemist Warehouse.
Yeah, you know where to go. Nick, this time of the challenge, we've spoken a lot about auditing over the past couple of weeks. We've spoken about nutrition auditing, we've spoken about, training auditing, and, that third, big rock of the challenge is to look at our lifestyle, right? To understand what's going on around our life and how that could impact our ability to transform our body. And sure, like that fourth rock would be our mindset. But, our mindset doesn't directly impact our ability to transform our life, right? Our mindset could manipulate, how much effort we put in and staying on track. But our lifestyle and how we approach our life can directly impact how our body transformation happens, okay? 3 key areas to consider, right? Number 1 is this concept of preparation and logistics around training, okay? Because that's our lifestyle. If you live a very busy life, you've got lots of social events going on, we've got kids thrown in the mix, you've got other responsibilities, maybe looking after your parents or pets or whatever it is, that can directly impact your ability to do things like meal prepare and get ready to go to the gym, or even logistical factors like, okay, when are you going to train? When are you going to get your steps in? Do you have time to actually do this thing? And often we have people sign up to the challenge, really excited to transform their life, transform their body, but may not have the time to invest in that. Like, sure, you might be able to follow a diet because, you've got to eat anyway, but when are you going to actually be able to go to the gym? When are you able to go and get your steps up? Like, do you have time to invest and maybe educate and learn by reading some of the articles and engage in some of the content that we create, like this podcast, right? Maybe preaching to the choir right now, those who have time to listen to the Challenge podcast. But it's a great time to consider what are your ability to prepare for the challenge is like, and then logistical considerations, like can you actually get it done, right?
Very true. Very true.
The next area to consider, of course, is our approach to sleep and our quality of sleep, okay? Now, when it comes to sleep, Nick, I like to look at it as a quality type idea rather than just the number of hours you sleep. Because I'm sure you've done this where you may go to bed at, 9 o'clock and you wake up at 6 and you're like, oh, great, I slept for 9 hours. But you wake up and, it feels like someone's just slapped you in the face. You don't know what year it is. And you're like, where am I?
Yeah.
So you've had either really, really deep sleep, or maybe you've been like tossing and turning all night and you just had a really poor quality of sleep. So you might have said that you slept for 9 hours, but it's been a very low and shallow sleep. Versus other times where you might go to sleep at 10 o'clock, wake up at 4 a.m. and you feel like you're ready to take on the world because you've had just a true deep quality sleep. Okay. And there's many factors that go into, your sleep quality, and it's more than just the number of hours of sleep. And it does touch on a few ideas around the preparation towards sleep and then the environment that you're sleeping in as well.
Yeah, it can make a huge difference. You don't think it can, but it really can, to just audit your sleep environment a little bit.
Finally, we need to look at our stress environment, okay? Now, stress is multifactorial. Of course, we've got like ideas like mental stress. You've got your work deadlines, you've got financial stresses, you've got your kids yelling at you, just kind of like life stresses. Good old capitalism for you. But, that stress plays a big part in, our ability to transform our body. It was like stress is kind of like a dial. And as we turn up our stress levels, it turns down our ability to build muscle. Okay. Then, when we are stressed, there are some like behavioral responses, like, we might turn to food to consume. If we are really stressed, we're not even thinking about food while we eat it. So we tend to overconsume and such. So mental stress is one part of it. Physical stress is another part. So if you are training really hard, you've been running around like crazy, you're doing 20, 30, 40,000 steps a day, that adds a lot of, physical stress to the whole like pressure dial of stress. So we've got mental stress, we've got physical stress, and then finally we have this kind of like emotional, spiritual stress, right? And that's like kind of like the deeper, like, purpose in life. Am I doing what I want to do? Am I doing this challenge because I want to do the challenge, or is it what I think people want me to do because society tells me I need to lose weight, right? And those deeper core value stresses can compound as well. So as a culmination of those 3 areas, if we are experiencing lots of stress, that just turns the dial more and more, and that turns down the dial of ability to build muscle and ultimately transform that body.
Yeah, right? Which then leads to you not thinking that anything's changing, which then leads to you being more stressed about that.
Yeah.
So it's a vicious cycle, stress.
So thinking about our 3 areas, preparation, logistics, sleep, stress, 4 questions-ish you can ask yourself, right? So number 1 is, what are you doing well? Okay, so if you are having good quality sleep, great, tick it off. Are you do you have plenty of time to go to a gym and you've got all the facilities around you? You've got some, great places to do your meal prep at home and store it in a fridge and all these things. What are you doing well is the first question to ask yourself. It's great to reflect on that question. Like, why did you choose that as your thing that you're doing well, right? So, if I say that, I'm doing well because I drink X amount of water a day, it's like, well, why did I choose that to be the thing that I'm doing well? Is that what I'm putting really high on my priority list versus other things that could be up in the priority list as well? Mm-hmm. Next is to consider what is your limiting factor, where if you're unable to improve certain elements, we should start to reflect on why we can't improve that element, right? So let's say, preparation logistics. If you can't improve your ability to do meal prep or improve your ability to get into a gym or to, get changed into clothes, like what is in your way to stop doing that? Is it because you've got kids that you have to look after? Is it because you're working from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and beyond? Is it because you're running around trying to run your own business and you've got financial stresses and all these things? What is your limiting factor? Okay.
And can you change that, or is it going to live with you and you have to work around it?
That's right.
Because you can't always change everything.
That's right. The final is a double whammy, which is, what can you change in the short term versus what could you change in the long term? Where, like you said, Nick, sometimes we just can't change things. Like,
yes.
You can't change the fact that you've got kids, right? So that might be something that you need to reflect on, saying, I can't change this, but I can maybe change my approach to it. So what could you change in the short term to remove that limiting factor and improve your lifestyle considerations versus what could you do in the long term? So maybe something you could do today versus something you could do over the next year. So maybe in the long term, your kids might be moving out of home, right? Or going to school now instead of being in childcare. Or in the long term, you might be able to arrange a situation where your parents can look after your kids or something like that, right? So what could you do in the long term versus the short term to improve your lifestyle situation?
All very important things to consider. And it's also all about taking personal responsibility. It always comes back to that because nobody's going to do it for you.
That's right. That's right. Now, Nick, we've spoken a lot about audits.
Yes.
I think it's time that we take a moment to audit ourselves.
I agree. People love that.
People love that. So, Nick, you've been training for a long time.
Yes. Many long times.
Many long times. Times long they are.
Times long they are.
Tell me, we every year we learn more about ourselves and improve ourselves. Thinking about it off the top of your head, what's something over the past, let's say, 12 months that you might have learned or someone might have suggested to you, or a bit of advice you've been given about your own fitness journey, and how have you seen that change your approach?
Yeah, so for me it was really, really, really important to actually listen, because I've been given advice for many, many years, but what bit of advice have I listened to finally would be to quit doing so much cardio, as in, bike riding, other things like that, and actually concentrate on eating and building some muscle. So it's paying off now as I'm starting to reveal the physique. It's ridiculous, like the changes that I've been able to make. So for me, actually not faking it, not half-assing it, but actually going into a surplus and committing to that kind of a process without pretending that I was to myself, because I always would go into the gym, lift reasonably heavy, probably with not the best technique, and just be strong but skinny. Skinny. So I think that's the best bit of advice, to just actually stop trying to do everything, stop trying to be good at everything, and just knuckle down and do one thing.
Yeah, I like it. Well, then, moving forward, what do you think you could do better in your journey? Well,
now I actually have to take every single day as a very important day. Like, I can't just write off the day. I've got to have my processes for every single day as I get ready for this comp. So what I need to do is always make sure that I'm not wimping out every day. For me, it's really important because I have this time critical goal, which some people in the challenge might have as well. So it might translate over to them as well. So if I have the choice between going out in the rain to do some steps or not, at the moment I would choose it, or I would choose that incidental exercise of just walking around, which I've been doing, doing some extra cleaning, things like that, just that neat exercise. So that sort of stuff I think is very very important for me to stay on top of, because I always go, especially I think with all the lockdowns and things, we don't talk about them anymore, but just nothing became time critical. So with this, it's actually going to happen. So it's time critical, and I've got to make the most of every second.
Yeah. I like that.
How about you?
Yeah, okay. So I think mine comes from like a like a negative place, right?
Yeah.
So when I was in the midst of like my powerlifting competitions, I had like my like little circle of friends where we were all like weightlifting, and would record videos of ourselves, send it to each other, and we would make comments about ourselves, like a self derogatory way. Things like, send the video and say like, RPE 11, right? That would mean like rate of perceived exertion being 11, which is a joke on itself, where RPE only goes to 10. So it's like, this was so hard, it was an 11, right? Or it would say like, I would say comments like, I was seeing Jesus, right? Because when you go to lift at your max, you might see the stars tingle a little bit, you might black out a little bit, those types of things, like, Jesus was spotting me, right? And then when ultimately what would happen was we would be training at such high loads and such high volumes that was just unsustainable. We would ultimately hurt ourselves in some way, right? Which would limit our progression. And then we would say something like, I've got bitchitis, is what we would say to each other. Like, I've got bitchitis because I couldn't keep up with my plan, or I didn't program it correctly. I went too hard too early, right? So what advice I pulled from my group of friends, where we were constantly making fun of ourselves about how silly our approach to programming was that would ultimately hurt ourselves because we were doing too much, too heavy, too soon, right? Where instead of intelligently programming it, we were just kind of ultimately ego lifting, right? Seeing how far we can push ourselves. So then what ended up ultimately happening was it just stagnated progression, where we were just trying to do too much, would hurt ourselves, we wouldn't progress, then we'd have to start all over again, all because it was RPE 11, Jesus will spot us, and, just send it, right?
Yeah.
So, I think that's important to consider, both for strength related goals and for muscle building goals, is that, we don't always need to train at the absolute max 100%. And then even beyond, where there are some advanced methods where you would do, negative reps, drop sets, rest pause sets, myo reps, whatever you want to call it, where you're going to failure or going to, ultimately RPE 10 and then trying to push it to RPE 11. And that is a limiting factor in progression, where you don't need to train in that area. You could train at RPE, 8, 9, just a little bit away from it, and still see some great progression results.
Yeah, I like that. And also you can have the longevity, because you're still a young chicken. So you don't want to have all the byproduct of training like that going into your older years. You want to keep training forever.
That's right. And I think, moving forward, that's like a big part of my training right now, especially, try to fit in being a dad into all of this. And, with another one along the way, managing things like my sleep, my stress levels, getting into the gym, all the logistics stuff. Literally the lifestyle audit is difficult. So I can't train at RPE 11 or 10 or 9 or 8. I'm cruising around like that 7 and 8s, sometimes into a 9, because I'm struggling to recover from my training. So that means that I can't train at such a high level, right? So it's all about managing your pipeline, like what you can put in, because that pipeline is your recovery pipeline. So as you feed stuff into it, it needs to progress through that pipe and come out the other end. You can't jam that pipe full of stuff, or you're going to get a blockage. Absolutely. You need to be cautious about how much stuff you're putting in, because we all have a pipe that is of certain diameter, where some of us can handle a lot more volume and stuff. Some of us, our pipe gets narrow because we've got lots of things putting pressure on that pipe. So we just need to understand what comes in to understand what comes out.
Yeah, good.
Nick, let's move on to our next segment here. We're moving on to our community highlight, where we highlight some of the members of our community. So Nick, take us away. Who would you like to highlight this week?
All right. So I've got Ian Lursa. I haven't heard from Ian for a little while, and Ian says, Emerging from the arse end of COVID and related complications, I'm both glad and anxious to be back in the gym. Glad because it's the constant in my life that keeps me grounded and balanced, but anxious when I think of the aches and pains I'm going to experience this week after stimulating those dormant muscle fibers again. Either way, this is a lifelong process, and although I've only completed 2 weeks of the challenge to date, the show must go on. Have a great week.
I like that, Ian. Welcome back.
Yeah, welcome back. And Ian's just a lifetime gym person. He's a gym enthusiast. It's his life no matter what. So that just shows you, you've just got to get back on it and not really worry too much that you have had a little bit of a rest, and just get back on it. And that's what everybody does from time to time.
Nick, I am incredibly jealous of Ian's home gym.
I know, it's pretty epic.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you can't really ignore that gym for long, can you, Ian? It calls your name.
It's calling out to me.
Yeah, we might try and see if we can do a photo shoot there one time or something. Okay, next one we've got Samantha Jeff. She goes, was easy to get my steps in today, walking with this legend. An old childhood friend of mine set out on an epic challenge to raise money for Kids Helpline. Jake discovered running during a dark time in his life. He ran and walked his way from Sydney to the Gold Coast last week. Total legend. So she just talked a bit about a fundraiser that her friend was doing. And I think that's really nice, because that's part of the reason why some of us get into fitness, is to help others as well. And it's not, you can be very insular when you're trying to shred for the challenge and look at your abs and do all sorts of stuff like that. So it's actually really good to put your head up and remember what's going on out there as well, and why it's nice to be able to be fit and participate in all these other things.
Yeah, I like that. Maybe we'll put the link to that fundraiser in the show notes.
I think so, yeah. So there is a link if you want to help, and that'd be good. So it's for the Kids Helpline, which is good. And the next one we've got is Tammy Denning. Hi, Tammy. And Tammy has a self-care Saturday, because Tammy's using our hashtags. Don't forget to use our hashtags. So one of them is Self-Care Saturday. As always for me, it's stretching and Pilates at home. I'm off to work today on my day off for a few hours. I even walked the dog while still dark out. Happy Saturday, everyone. So good time management, Tammy.
Yeah, getting it all done on a Saturday. I love it. I've got a few here that I'd like to highlight. So first one goes out to a challenge favorite, goes to Ben Fitz. Ben, and he posted a photo which I thought was really nice, and it was a before and after, and both of him being very lean. And Ben's done multiple challenges with us across the years, and once came in our top 3 finalists. And he writes, the difference between shredding and bulking. I'm on 3,200 calories at the moment and loving it, and still staying lean. Hope you're having a wonderful journey. Just remember, you can do anything you put your mind to 100%.
Yeah.
Love it, Ben. And yes, that photo was 2 back shots of Ben. One when he was shredding, maybe just before he concluded the challenge, and another one where he's trying to put on a bit of muscle, consuming a lot more calories now. Remember, 3,200 calories, a little bit meaningless outside of context. So if you're not consuming 3,200 calories, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It's just what works for Ben. Okay.
That's right. At this given moment in time.
Exactly.
As well,
right.
So, yeah.
But Ben really showing us how just solid hard work. A good routine, getting into the gym, getting it done, has some great results on the body, and it's a multi-year journey. So congratulations to Ben.
Well done, Ben. I know that you inspire a lot of people, so keep going.
Next one goes out to Anita Kelly, and she posted a little photo, right? And the photo was a few words, and the photo says, crazy how people get up at 5 a.m. to work out. I won't even get up at 5 a.m. to pee. I will just lie there in pain. Haha. And she writes, truth. But if 5 a.m. works for you, get on with it. We've got 12 weeks to smash our goals and create healthier versions of ourselves. Woo! Little party hat.
Cool.
And I thought this was funny because, some people are morning people, right? Like you and I, Nick, getting up quite early to go and train, where others, simply aren't. And that's okay. You don't need to be a morning person to be successful in your fitness journey. It's about what works for you. And if 5 a.m. is time to work out, or 5 a.m. is to lay there when you need to go to the toilet and you don't want to get up, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's right. Each to their own. I mean, I live with someone who will not get up at that time, and I can't change that, and I don't want to, because he's quite happy to do all the nighttime training, and so we swap.
Yeah.
It works.
Finally here we have Alan Traher, and Alan writes, finishing week 6 off with some recovery. ice bath and sauna session. Hopefully this helps with some sore spots. And he had a few photos of what looked like a at-home sauna situation.
That's nice.
Right? And it looked like maybe it looked like a little bit of an infrared sauna, but it might have been a traditional sauna. Well, either way, I'm jealous. I'd love to have a sauna.
Yeah, I'm desperate for an infrared sauna at home. I thought you were going to say it was a photo of like a homemade ice bath, which is basically a wheelie bin with ice in it.
Yep, I've heard of that. The old like freezers that people have, lay them down and fill them up with ice. Yeah, there's some.
Yeah, one day I'd like you to talk me through what cold therapy versus hot therapy does.
Cryotherapy, in most cases,
doesn't do anything.
No.
Right? That's what I thought you'd say.
Yeah. So the super summary of it is research isn't super conclusive. There are some folk who are diehard enthusiasts saying that it's going to cure. The best thing since sliced bread is to lay in some ice. Okay, no dramas. But in most cases, no, we don't see any significant changes. And if anything, Nick, an ice bath blunts the hypertrophy response.
That's what I read. I read that. Yeah. And but is that just newish research? Because
yeah. So even like if you think of like the mechanisms behind it, so cold therapy, cryotherapies, let it be a cold shower, an ice bath, it does help with inflammation, right? We have, this bias to think inflammation is a bad thing, right? Where inflammation is actually the process of healing. So we see that in tissue damage. So if you tear a muscle, inflammation is what starts the cascade of effects to build muscle again. And similar when you train, the swelling, the pump that you get is inflammation. So if you then go to apply strategies to reduce that inflammation, such as ice bath, cold showers, water plunge, whatever it is, that can then blunt some healing responses. So, some folk who definitely think that inflammation is a bad thing, okay, maybe warranted. Some inflammation might be limiting factors for X, Y, and Z reasons, but in the world of building muscle, it might be a limitation to your ability to grow big.
Interesting.
Nick, let's move on to our Coach's Corner, where we offer our tip for the week. So, Nick, take us away. What advice do you have for us?
Well, I just want to talk about everybody who's just training to be better at being a human, like perhaps to be healthier, as we usually say, to be able to play with your kids, to do all that sort of stuff. So you and I, we kind of live to train. We love it. Like we're obsessed with it. And there's probably a lot of people in the challenge community that feel the same. But for people that we would say, like just general population, just want to get better at certain things. And then you see people, on there that are extreme, on our community, there's a million different people with amazing abs and veins and all sorts of stuff like that. But that doesn't mean that has to be what you do. You don't have to live to train. You can actually train to live. And so I just wanted to say that that also does require just as much grit and determination as doing, say, a fitness competition does as you're still getting into your routine. So when people are on the forum asking me about giving up and things like that, I want to talk to them and I want them to listen to this. I'd like them to really sit down and set their goal for themselves. So, like, for example, what would you say to a first-timer with a fitness goal just to get a bit healthier? Would you say go and, wouldn't you say the same thing as you would say to George with his broomstick, just with his squat? You would say, just take it easy. Don't stress. Find meals that suit you. Find the routine that suits you. Find little goals that you can, do. It doesn't have to be being in the gym. You can do a run. You could try one new workout a week, as long as you do, your 10,000 steps a day. You could work out about doing some push-ups every day. You could maybe meal prep for 7 days in a row. There's so many different things that you can do just to take it right back. So I just wanted to remind everybody about training to live and not living to train. So I think that when you get older, unless you've got a gym like Ian or, you kind of get paid to do it like we do, you have to sort of realize where it's going to fit into your life and not stress too much if you have like that bit of chocolate. Like there was somebody that was talking about giving up because they had a bit of chocolate. And we spoke about that last week. And it's going to take you that grit and determination to get through that. But what you have to do is think about it as your life, not a challenge per se. So how's it going to fit into your life? And if you're going to have chocolate forever, acknowledge that and figure out where it fits in. I think there is something that Craig Harper does say that I'm going to sort of quote, and that is, you can't really get a clap every day for just getting out of bed. And I sort of do agree with that. And I think that in life, if you think about it as just training to live and life has its ups and downs, then so what if you had a piece of chocolate? So what if you missed a workout? So what, unless you're getting on stage and you've chosen to do that, then you have to be able to learn how to fit it into your life. And you have to sort of, now don't shoot me, you can edit this out, but you have to sort of grow up. And you can't have a clap every single day you get out of bed, like when you go to work and stuff like that. So it's really important to train to live, not live to train, unless you accept the responsibility of living to train. So we do. So you know how you're not doing your 11 out of 10 all the time. You've accepted that responsibility that you are living to train. So obviously you've got baby George, and another one on the way, and Laura fits in here too. But it's very important to you. You're training. You'd never give it up, would you?
No.
So there are some people that may step away sometimes from the training because other things come up, and that's also okay. It's just that baseline of health. What does that mean to you? And also, just remember that you can't always have a clap just for being generally healthy. I think it's really important to just get yourself up, get on with it, and just generally try and keep yourself in a decent shape for what works for you. Set yourself those little goals, and you can't be stopping and starting over a piece of chocolate.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it a lot. I think, not to take away too much what you're trying to say here, Nick, is sometimes when we look at training and fitness and, doing going to the gym and following a diet and all these things that go into the challenge and the fitness lifestyle, it's not too different from literally every other hobby that is out there. Okay. Take, for example, the garden at your house. Okay. Do you have much of a garden? You got a big garden? Well,
we do. We've got a bit of a garden. Yes.
Right. So I'm not really a green thumb, but I like to look outside and not have a jungle growing outside. Hideous, right.
Yeah.
So just like your approach to your own garden, some of us, we, just mow the lawns, right? And if that's your base of your garden, okay, that's fine. That's what you've accepted to be the base. Versus some of us might have, a garden bed, a retaining wall, maybe some fancy plants, some garden areas that need to be weeded and kept and hedged and trimmed, right? Then you have to manage all the aspects into your garden. So if you want to have a really beautiful and luxurious garden, you need to put effort into it there. And of course, you might be saying, oh, Steve, you just paid for someone to do your garden, right? Okay, sure, take that idea away. But if you want to manage your garden and have a beautiful garden, a luxurious garden, you need to put work into it. It's exactly the same as our approach to fitness. If you want to have, the body you dreamed of and the six pack and, be fit and healthy, okay, it's just like having a really exotic garden. You need to put some work in. But if you only want to, mow the lawn, just like with your approach to training, all right, you just want to get your 10,000 steps in, that's okay, it's maintained. But what is not something that's, helpful is if you just let that garden overgrow, right? Because that's not what we don't want. We don't want to be living in a house where there's a jungle out the back, right? If you miss a weekend where you didn't pull out a few weeds, okay, so be it. We're getting back on. We've got to eventually, weed it. And that's the same approach as when you are trying to do this fitness thing. If you have a weed growing in your backyard, you've eaten a bar of chocolate, okay, whatever. What are you going to do? You're going to move on. You're going to pull that weed out and let your garden still be beautiful. And that's how you should approach your goals to fitness, right?
Yeah, I think playing the blame game and going, oh, look, those weeds were not removed and I'm going to quit weed removing from now on, it's only going to affect your garden.
Yeah.
Nobody else in the street's really going to care.
No.
If it overgrows to the point where you can't see your house, they might go, we need to go and save that person. And that's like hospital.
Yeah.
That's when your weeds are so big that you can't even get into your house.
Yeah.
So, take responsibility ultimately for your garden and decide where you want it to sit in the scheme of gardens.
Yeah. How fancy do you want to have your garden?
Yep.
Nick, I'd like to talk about a topic that sometimes grinds my gears.
Yes, I know. So I'm if I had a cup of coffee, I'd take a sip and batten down the hatches because here we go.
Here we go. No, okay. So I want to talk about rest between sets.
Yep.
Okay. Now, first, I'd like to start off with what we recommend in the challenge. 4 goals related to building muscle is for people to have a rest between 1 minute and 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's our recommendation. All right. Now, for most of us, the actual time that you rest isn't that important. We shouldn't be dictating the rest between sets by a certain time. And what I mean by that is that if you've just finished a set of bicep curls, there's no need for you to start a timer on your phone or, a stopwatch or look at the clock and go, okay, countdown's on. I only need, 90 seconds and then I'm off into my next set. That's ultimately silly. Okay. What should dictate our rest between sets is a subjective experience based on 4 key areas. Number 1, is the muscle that you're training ready for another set? So if I've just done bicep curls and I set a timer on for 90 seconds and 90 seconds is up and I've got to grab those dumbbells and my biceps are just not ready to do a bicep curl, there's no point in me doing bicep curls because I'm not ready. I can't perform. You need to rest for longer. That's firstly, is the target muscle ready to perform another set? Next key area is, are the accessory muscles, the synergist muscles, ready to perform? So again, bicep curl, we need to have strength in our hands because we've got to grip the dumbbell or barbell or cable, whatever it is. Our forearm, our shoulders need to be ready to be able to do that exercise, that set. So if you go to do a bicep curl and your forearms are still pulsing and burning, and you won't be able to perform that set appropriately so that you're reaching close to an overload stimulus. No point in doing another set, regardless of what that stopwatch tells you. That's 2. Number 3 is we need to be ready cardiovascularly or cardiorespiratorily, meaning that if you're going to do a heavy set of squats and you're out of breath, you've just done a really heavy set of squats or deadlifts or whatever exercise you're doing, 90 seconds ticks over on your stopwatch and you're still trying to catch your breath, there's no point in trying to do another set because you're only able to do a couple of reps before you're out of breath again. So you should rest for longer. And then number 4, we need to be mentally ready for another set. So if you do a heavy set of any exercise and it's just, fatigue you mentally, you go, oh my God, what the hell was that, right? You might be ready, the muscle ready, the synergist muscle's ready, your cardiovascular system is ready, but you're staring at that barbell or the machine or the dumbbell or whatever it is and you're like, oh shit, not again. There's no point doing another set, okay? So the other 4 checklist items that you should be ticking off before you get ready for another set. In most cases, you do your set, you record your performance. So in a logbook, on the M Challenge app, in Google spreadsheets, whatever it is, you record your set that you did. Maybe take a sip of water, reflect on your lift that you just did. Maybe you record yourself, watch the video. These things will take 1, 2, 3 minutes to complete that. Then you're getting ready to do another set once you're ready. If you feel that you need to time yourself to rest, stop. Turn the timer off and take that internal subjective response about how you approach your training. If you feel that you need some sort of time to dictate when you go and train, maybe spend more time actually executing the exercise better so that you need the rest, right? Being a little bit of a gatekeeper here, I don't know, I said I don't want to be a gatekeeper, is that you need to earn your rest. Meaning that when you complete the exercise, it should be difficult. It should be close to a failure experience, meaning that, we need to see a decrease in performance over the progress of that set. Okay. So that's the main idea I want to say. If you feel that a way to progress is by reducing the rest, that's limiting. So saying it in another way, reducing your rest time is not a form of progression. especially for muscle building goals or strength goals. If your goals are more related to CrossFit related goals, sports specific goals, or maybe cardiovascular related goals, okay, we can modify our rest time to challenge our cardiovascular system. But reducing your rest times does not build muscle, does not burn fat, or does not increase our strength. Okay, you will benefit from resting longer so that you can have a larger stimulus and a better performance in your set than by reducing the rest time. Okay,
Yeah.
so 2 ideas. 1, don't use time to dictate your rest time. Use the qualitative checklist. 2, don't think that your rest time or reducing your rest time is a form of progression, because that is pseudo progression. That is not progression. And number 3, the amount of reps you complete in a given set should not dictate your rest. So some folk out there like to think that if they're doing higher repetitions, that they therefore need lower rest times. And again, that's misleading and that's silly because we prescribe, or you should be lifting a load where you get close to technical failure, regardless if it's 5 repetitions or upwards of 30 repetitions. So if you're doing bicep curls and you're doing 20 repetitions, reps number, 17, 18, 19, and 20 should be, RPE 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10, right? So you should be reaching that failure regardless of the reps that you complete. So if you're doing 25 repetitions, you finish it, you put the dumbbells down, you go, well, that was pretty easy. All right, 30 seconds rest and go again. You did not take that set close to failure where it's an overload stimulus. So you just were making yourself tired. So you either need to increase the load, increase the reps that you do, or increase the execution of that exercise so that it is a fatiguing experience. Okay. Rest is one of those variables that is pretty simple. Just sit down, rest between sets. We don't need to be doing concepts of like steady state cardio when we approach weightlifting. So we don't need to be just constantly moving, trying to expend energy, because we get that energy expenditure from our step count. Lifting weights is not an effective way to burn energy or to expend calories. What we're doing when we're lifting weights is we're trying to stimulate muscle growth so that we can improve our physique. So take your rest, like a parent. Take your rest. Just sit down, chill out, record what you're doing, reflect on your execution if you're filming yourself, take a drink, prepare for the next set, and then execute that set effectively so that you need that rest. So we want to be training to a point where you need that rest. And if you're not needing that rest, you're not training effectively.
Yeah, I think that's a game changer once you realize that. And also, like, I'll just tell you the Nicoletta rest system. I usually go, after I finish something, I never want to do that again. And then maybe like about a minute later, I go, I could consider doing that again. And close to that, like 90 seconds to 2 minutes, I'm like, all right. And then sort of at that 2 minutes 20 or something, I feel everything flooding back to me.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, okay. All right, let's give this another go. But at the end of it, before that, I'm like, I just don't even want to ever squat again in my life.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So I don't know if that's written down in any book anywhere.
Yeah. Well, like, see, it's actually really interesting, like physiologically, without boring individuals, about that 60 to 90 seconds is where the creatine phosphate system is what replenishes our ATP stores, right? So you might find after that minute to 90 seconds, and this is what we would say in a textbook, is you get that increase in ATP, right? So you're like, well, yeah, I kind of get that energy coming back. So we need to rest for at least that time, which is why that lower end is that like 1 minute. So that's at least to replenish ATP, right? Yeah. That doesn't mean that 60 to 90 seconds is like the holy gospel, where for some of us, it takes a little bit longer. Yeah. Depending on how much you're lifting, you may need longer rests, where you might find that what works well for you is that like, 2 to 3 minutes. Of course, there is that concept of taking the piss. If you're going to pull out the camping chair and sit there for 10 minutes, okay, like you're starting to cool down.
With powerlifting, sometimes we used to do that. And I used to wonder if maybe I was cooling down, but not just my body, but my mind as well. You've got to watch out that you don't get your head out of the game as well with that sort of lifting heavy shit. Yeah.
Like I find what keeps me on track that I don't get like sidetracked. And that's the main concept here, is that sometimes if you're resting for that long, you can kind of like get distracted from what you're trying to do. I'm listening to music, and a cue for me, most songs are around that like 3 minute mark. So once I notice that the song is changing to to the next song, that's at least kind of giving me that cue. Okay, like you've probably, rested enough. All right, get your head into the game. All right, let's get ready to lift. So that what keeps me from being distracted, which is the other side of the conversation. But for most individuals, it's not a distraction problem. It's this idea that we feel we need to get sweaty, we need to get the heart racing because that somehow does something, which it doesn't. You getting your sweat on or your heart rate racing or something does not burn body fat, does not improve your ability to build muscle, and is just misleading. Unless your goal is sports related or cardiovascular related. For most of us, it's not. We're trying to build our physique. You don't see bodybuilder bros and broettes doing 10-second rest in between sets and ridiculous things. Take your rest, get your pump, and move on.
The tribe has spoken.
Nick.
Yes.
Let's move on to our next segment. We've got our question and answer. First question here. Hi all. This is from Chris. Chris writes, hi all. On Sunday, I woke with flu-like symptoms. I am still unable to function with a K. However, I have zero energy. I am wondering if I should just skip training for a couple of days until I'm feeling strong again. Will training potentially extend my sickness, or will training positively affect my recovery period? Thanks, Chris. Nick, what advice would you give Chris?
Well, Chris, okay, so flu-like symptoms, firstly, I mean, these days we're supposed to absolutely stay away from other people. Just make sure that you do that. So, I would recommend staying away from the gym if you've got flu-like symptoms, but if you've got a home setup, I would also recommend with those sorts of symptoms to, rest up until you feel better. Just rest that body. I did read somewhere the other day, which is quite interesting, is if it's above the neck, sort of you feel a bit coughy, a bit congested, then you could probably keep training as long as you're away from other people. But if it's aches, pains, things that are really slowing you down and your body just doesn't feel like it can train, then have a rest. There's nothing wrong with having a rest. We were just talking about rest. Yeah. That can extend to also when you're sick. You're not going to win a prize for getting out there. And also, if someone asks me that and it says, I have zero energy, as a coach, if someone says I have zero energy and I go and train, that would probably be not good. I don't think I would be allowed to be a coach. So if someone says they've got no energy and they're sick, I would say stay away until you feel better, because you will feel better. Yeah.
Well, even just that, if you're saying you have zero energy, what kind of training are you expecting to
that's right. Complete? That's right. It's that sort of the guilt about not pulling a weed out. Yeah. So, it's okay, Chris. You can rest up until you feel better. You're probably even better now that this podcast is out and you're listening. So I'm sure you're back training.
Yeah. I think reflecting on my experiences last time I was sick with the old Rona was I generally felt like I had no energy. It was a mission to get off the couch if I was laying down.
Yeah, you wouldn't have gone into the shed and picked up a barbell.
No. But my but here is that once I started moving, I did feel better, even though I was unwell. So, I was, cleaning up around the house, doing chores. With COVID, couldn't really leave the house. After dark, I had to take the dog for a walk. I need to get some fresh air. So, went out. Okay, sue me. But I felt better once I was able to get some steps in, right? So there is that spectrum where, doing some physical activity, you might feel good. If you expect to go and train, you probably won't be able to lift very, very heavy, right?
Yeah, and I just think that would be a waste of a training session. You've gone there, you've set up everything, and then also can leave just a bit of a bad taste in your mouth if you're feeling fluey, and then you go to do something and you can't do it as well as you normally would, and you're not telling yourself it's because you're sick. You think you've regressed, and so just keep an eye on that. It's okay to take a rest.
Nick, next question here comes from Mark. And Mark writes, hi team, haven't posted in a while and I thought I would ask you to take on something. I'm getting a lot of videos on Facebook, etc. on weightlifting, and a question came up from me. When doing dumbbell work on chest or shoulders, should I press the dumbbells and connect them at the peak of the press? Lots of chatter online from other gym goers that it's a cheat move to add rest at the peak. Thoughts and advice. Okay, lots of thoughts. Conscious of the time. Let's speed run it. So what is Mark talking about? He's talking about this concept of convergence. So when you do, let's say, a dumbbell chest press, you're pressing the dumbbells towards the sky, and then you're bringing your hands together. They're converging, right? Maybe in an overhead press position, you're pressing the arms to the sky, and then you're bringing your hands together, okay? So firstly, some convergence is, a normal part of the movement, right? So when you're doing a chest press, if you're training your pecs, you need that element of what's called adduction, bringing the arms together. Similar with an overhead press, there reaches a certain point where you need to go further to bring the hands together. There is somewhat some correction in it, meaning that if you are moving the dumbbells with gravity, so once you press to the sky and then moving the hands closer together, you're moving it with gravity, not against gravity. So, that's really easy, right? So you could have, let's say, 50 kilos in your hand and you move your hands like 5 centimeters apart from each other, together and apart. You can do that all day because there's no load. So there is some, what's what I'm looking for? Right in this idea where, pressing straight to the height and straight to the sky and then bringing the hands together might be a little bit of, quote, a waste of time because there's no load there. So if you're doing like a chest press, you might need to do both a chest press where you're pressing to the sky and then a like cable chest fly where you're loading that adduction, bringing the hands together. Okay. So the question is, should we bring the hands together when we're doing these exercises? Now, if we go back to how we define a repetition, where we want to have a very clear start and a very clear end point, and we want to repeat that start and end point over time, okay? So if you are arbitrarily lowering the dumbbells down to a certain spot and then pressing up to a certain spot, and each time is slightly different, that can be a limiting factor because you're not strengthening a movement pattern because it's random every time. Whereas if you were doing a dumbbell chest press where you lower the dumbbells until like the dumbbells touch your armpits and then press the dumbbells until the dumbbells touch together at the top, you have a very clear and defined range of motion. Here's point A and here's point B, and we're doing that motion rather than, here's point, A point 13 and here's, B point 32 and here's like, it changes every time. So we want to load a pattern over time. In most cases, a full range of motion will be better than partial range of motion so that we can take the pec or the shoulder through that full range of motion, regardless of the change in load, right? When we're talking about the dumbbell chest press, through that press to the sky is that mid-range portion of the pecs where the pecs are strong. But then as the dumbbells come together, the pecs are actually weaker because the cross fibers of the muscles get, overlapped. So that load as you're pressing the hands closer together does correlate over to the strength curve of the muscle, okay? So in most cases, you'd benefit from bringing the hands in closer together. With some exceptions where, you don't need to be pressing to the sky, rotating the dumbbells and trying to get your fingers to touch each other. That's just wasting the movement. You might as well just press what feels natural to the sky. A little bit of convergence is fine and coming back down. Other factors to consider with the dumbbell chest press is if you are bringing the hands closer together, the shoulder blades, the scapula can move, causing you to round on the bench, causing you to lose your balance slightly. So that's something to consider as well. There's some really great machines that allow for convergence. So as you're doing that machine, you're pressing and then the chest press machine comes together. You feel a crazy, pec contraction, and that has a better strength profile. So in most cases, that would be better than doing a dumbbell version of that chest press. So convergence is good. Now, some folk out there would think about, this idea of a rest in between repetitions as a bad thing for some reason. Again, you want a clear start and end position. It's okay to, take a moment to like pause at that start and end position. There's nothing wrong with that. Some folk might use that argument of time and attention, which again is a misleading way to progress. Time and attention isn't significant when we're trying to complete the repetition. So you can have a micro rest in between reps. You don't need to have a constant time and attention because time and attention is hard to measure. We want to be training in a way that we can measure so that we can progress over time. Okay. So if you get lost in the realm of time and attention, come out of time and attention, just go back into counting repetitions, under control, feel the muscle pump, measure how much you can do, how much volume you can do so you can progress. Okay. But good question, Mark. In most cases, it is kind of chatter online. In most cases, it does kind of muddy the waters. And honestly, in most cases, it doesn't matter too much. These are the small rocks, the 1%ers that maybe can play a part in what we're doing. But as long as you're consistent over time, you can measure it consistently over time so that you can improve consistently over time. That's all that matters.
Yes. There's full on probably forums about this.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a thing.
It's a thing. Nick, next question here comes from Christy. Christy writes, I always feel like a goose when trying to take my progress shots. Now, I know my physique has improved quite a bit, but on some occasions, I can't get the camera to quite accurately reflect my progress, even when I try to replicate the exact conditions of previous photos. Any tips? For example, are there certain postures that might better reflect our hard work? E.g., tips on our hips, breathe in, flex or not, position the camera, natural versus artificial light, and where should we put our arms for the back and side photos? Thanks, coaches. Nick, what advice would you give on progress photos?
Well, I'll give you some advice, absolutely. But I also must just say, looking at that where it says to better reflect our hard work, a picture doesn't lie. So if you just stand there straight in the same place every single time, not posed, that is actually probably the best reflection of your progress, to be honest. But if we're going to get into posing, if we're going to get into angles, if you're doing it for the gram, or if you're doing it for a stage show, because that's completely posed. So we know how to work out angles. Like I can stand there straight and look like a straight ruler, or I can do the tip and do the tilt and I can look like I've got all sorts of shapes going on. So it depends, like as our usual answer, it depends what you want it for. But just say you want it to, look like a great reflection of your progress in the best light, like everybody does. I will give you some tips. So I find early morning, like I usually do my check-ins on a Sunday morning, say like 7 a.m., 7:30. I don't get up to do it, but that's just the time that I happen to wake up. And if I miss that time, then late afternoon, so natural light. Find a place in your house where you can get the natural light. I don't find any artificial light to be of any use. You don't want too much sunlight. You want the curtains sort of half down, half up. So for the same, you can take it the same time. It is important to not trick yourself because you can get very, very flattering light that can make you look like you've got certain things that you don't have. But it's up to you. In terms of this competition, the judges don't want to see too much flexing, just because it's all about progress. It's not a competition on stage where you do sort of big flexes and things like that. But you can certainly include some extra photos. Okay, sure, you can try all the different postures, but yeah, breathing in can actually look really awkward because it shows in your neck, so just be aware of that as well. But it depends if it's for your private collection. And then, yeah, the camera I have found is best positioned slightly below you. It's good. I mean, that's also for me because the judges are going to be below me, so I need to have the same angle as those people. That's all I'm really worried about. But you need an uncluttered space, so it's good to try and have... look, I don't think I've ever been able to find a wall in my house that suits, but just least clutter as possible. And arms by your side you want to try, because you were saying, do you flex and all this sort of stuff for this comp? No. And for me, my biggest one that I tell everybody is I do a video, so then I can screenshot where I've done the best poses. Obviously, I'm not going to send crappy poses. So, yeah, that's my hot tip. And if I'm having a crap day, I'll go to all places in the house until I get what I want. That's the truth, because that's what people do. Then you're not going to put up a bad photo of yourself. So, yeah, I just don't think that there's any special secret tips. And also, if you think you look like crap, you probably don't. You're just being harsh on yourself.
Yeah, no, I like it. I just think, why are you trying to beat the camera?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, and not to point out to Christy, but, she says, like, I know that my physique has improved, but I can't get a photo to accurately reflect that.
Yeah.
And that should be a reflection on that to make, saying, well, has progress been made? Why are you trying to beat the camera? And if you beat the camera this time, you've got to beat the camera next time to see progress. Because if you don't beat the camera next time, you're going to be like, oh, I'm losing progress, right? And it's like, if you're trying to find the best angle and the best way to show your abs or your flex or whatever, and then if you can't replicate that in the future, you're going to be like, oh, well, I wasn't as good as I was last week. And I think, again, this goes back to the conversation around things like measuring our progress with scales, where people are very quick to reject scales, being like, oh, they fluctuate too much. Photos fluctuate even more so.
They'll show you.
There's the way more variables, both internally, how much water you drink, how much stress you are, have you got a tan today? And then external factors such as the light outside, what quality camera you're doing, what positions you're in. So there's more variables. And then if you're trying to play a game of spot the difference between before and after to see progress, you're there for a while trying to overlap the images to try to see if you've lost any progress and made changes, when you could use an objective measure like scale weight, average scale weight over the week to measure progress. So I just think that, one, try not to beat the camera, try to be, especially if it's just for progress. There's the other side of the conversation, like you said, Nick, where if it's for physique reasons,
you got to get your best angles.
You do.
But that's because it's on stage. You're being judged for who can produce the best angles on themselves.
Yeah. And I did the same thing. Like when I was bodybuilding a few years ago, like I would film myself doing the 7 mandatory pose, mandatory, that's the word, the 7 poses, and then I would watch videos over and over and being like, okay, there I was able to do the side chest, but my quads weren't flexing. All right, how do I make it all flex at the same time? So I was using a video to flex and improve my poses, but I wasn't using that to measure my progress. I wasn't being like, my front ab or most muscular, I wasn't trying to use that to determine how much body fat I had. It was a pose down, right? And that's the same as how you might film yourself exercising to reflect on the technique. But for progress, photos are not an effective way to measure short-term progress. They can be an effective way to measure long-term progress over, 3 months or so.
Yes, and also, let me just not take away from our previous winners. There's nothing that they've done particularly to improve they just look bloody good.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest. They look shredded, and maybe they've put a tan on and maybe some light, but you can't fake that.
No.
You can't fake it. So keep going, and your photos will reflect your progress no matter what.
Last question here, Nick, comes from Lisa. And Lisa writes, so it was a question on our Facebook social hub actually, and she writes, I've always been taught that calories come from fat, proteins, and carbs. Yeah, our macronutrients, yes. So that's how I track. So when I look at this, and she posted a photo of a label, she writes, to me, per serve should be only 1.6 calories, but the label states 24 calories. How can it be out so far? Right? There's literally nothing else on the label to add to macros besides sodium, which doesn't track as calories. I don't mind being a few calories out, but this is excessive. For the record, a serving size is 30 mils. To me, 24 calories in a 30 mil is rather high, ? Okay, let's talk about labels very quickly. So what Lisa has gone and done is she's calculated how many grams of, I think it was like carbohydrate maybe, and it said like 4 grams of carbohydrate. And then we know carbohydrate is about 4 calories per gram. So she goes, well, it should only be 1.6 calories, not 24 calories per serve. Okay, so firstly, let's talk about labels. Labels can be a little bit misleading, especially in the very, very small serving sizes. Okay, so firstly, manufacturers don't need to put the amount of protein, carbs, and fats if it's below a certain number. And off memory, it's about 1 gram. So, if you look at, let's say, candies or lollies, you go down that aisle and look at some of the labels, you might look at something like Tic Tacs. Now, Tic Tacs, their serving size is so small that when you look at it, it says that it has 0.0000, so it has nothing in it, right?
Yeah.
And literally a Tic Tac is just compressed sugar, right? So you can't say that eating a Tic Tac has nothing in it. It has something, even if it is like 0.0001, right? So in some cases, manufacturers, if it has 0.1 grams of fat or 0.1 grams of protein, they'll just put it as 0 because they can. They can round it down, right? So that's one thing that can happen, right? Next, manufacturers can be off, and they're allowed to be off by a certain number, and I think it's about 10%. So again, if every item, protein, carbs, and fats, is off by 10%, and then the calories is off by 10%, that can drastically change the number, okay? In most cases, it's better just to focus on the calorie suggested by the label rather than counting the macros, okay, because of that discrepancy. And this is where food variation can play a part, because labels can be incorrect by a certain percentage. But in terms of like data, without getting into data science too much, if we are consistently incorrect, then we're still consistent. So if we're taking a number and being 10% plus on that number, but consistently using that number over time, we can then manipulate that variable. But if we're randomly selecting random foods that all have their own variables of randomness, we can be less confident on the number. Okay, so if you are choosing to follow like an if it fits your macro style, reading labels, following MyFitnessPal and going, okay, this has this many calories, this many calories. One, you're running the roulette slightly on what is actually true on that label. And then two, if you're inconsistently incorrect, that's going to be, you can't be confident in your total calorie intake. But if you're consistently incorrect, having the same foods consistently over time, regardless on what that number is, it could say 24 calories or 24 units of energy. It could be 100 calories. It could be 10 calories. If you're having that same food over time, measuring if you're losing weight or gaining weight, and then you go, well, I'm not losing weight, so whatever this food item is, I'm just going to reduce it by 10%. So it could say 100 calories, it could say 24 calories, it could say 10 calories, it could say, 10 fun knuckles. If you reduce it by 10%, you reduce your total calories by 10%, regardless of what the calories you're actually consuming are, okay? So sometimes we get caught up a lot in like the actual world of the numbers, when it might be better to actually look at it loosely with squinting your eyes as a better way to measure progress, rather than being very meticulous in the numbers, because the numbers themselves can be incorrect, Nick.
And yeah, if it says 24 calories on there, then just count that as 24 calories and that's it.
That's it.
Unfortunately.
And in some cases, 24 calories can be quite small.
Yes,
right?
Absolutely.
And for some people, 24 calories is just the thermic effect of food, if you're choosing to have a protein versus having a fat item, right? Or 24 calories can be literally, if you've added olive oil to a meal, that might be what's left on the plate if you didn't lick the plate clean, right? So you could be up and down 24 calories just from the food options that you choose, how you consume that food, and then how your body digests the food. So in most cases, that 24 calories isn't going to break the bank, right?
No.
In most cases, like that is an extraneous variable that doesn't even play a part in it at all, right?
Yeah, if we're down to the nitty-gritty of worrying about 24 calories, you're in a really good spot.
That's right.
Because that means all your other variables are being ticked across the board everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Nick, let's wrap up there for episode number 79. I'm excited for next week, Nick. Number 80.
Number 80 in week 8. So, you like that sort of correlation.
It's meant to be.
So let's wait for that. Wait for 8.
Wait for 8. We'll catch you next week, guys, for number 80. And if you like this episode, share it with a friend. Let us know that you liked it. And we'll, catch you next week.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in, guys. If you like the show, share it with a friend.
Or leave us a review on iTunes to spread the good word. See you next time.